Hey, Warrior, welcome to another episode of the Warrior Way. I'm your host, Coach Cowan. Now, today I have a very special guest on with me, Mr. Clifford Myers. Now, I use this time to promote what my guest has going on, but Clifford has specifically asked me to promote that he hates promotion. So simply, if you would like to hang out with Clifford and have a chat with him, just add him on Facebook. So Clifford, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm clearly not doing a great job as a comedian if I hate promotion. Clearly. um, it's always been a part of the industry I've never appreciated or enjoyed. I've never liked relationships where everyone has something on the go. Oh, what's the thing you're doing? Can I be a part of the thing you're doing? Oh, I'm only talking to you because you're doing a thing. Like I was never interested in that. For me, my draw to comedy was so experiential. So like I get to be in the moment and create and do this thing with strangers, and it feels rebellious and it feels wrong at times, and I love that, and I love that it's ours. That's why a lot of times I don't even like recording my shows, because I'm like, why do other people get to sit at home? They didn't even put in the work to come out to the show, so why do
You
they
don't
get
show
to
up,
have
you
those
don't get
feelings?
it.
Why do they get to experience the magic? I gave it that night. And it was special for the 13 people in that broom closet. So definitely, I know a bit of a contrarian view on how you're supposed to be as an entertainer, especially in the age of digital where everyone's got a thing. And, I'll have my own projects and stuff too, but I'm just not a fan of promotion. I just never have. I've always wanted to go in, even as anyone that enjoys my shows or whatever, I want to get to know them. Like a lot of times when I'm on stage, I'm opening up to what other people's stories are, because I believe there's a lot of comedy waiting in every audience member. That's why I'm a very heavy crowd work comic. And so like I'll get to know a lot of people in the crowd. And for me, it's always been very relational. And that's kind of been my draw, the energy that brought me to comedy. So yeah, like I know it's kind of like, a little ass backwards there, but like I'm not, just not a fan of promotion.
That's absolutely fine. If anyone does want to see what he's up to, just search for him. Clifford Myers. He's out there. He's
Yeah,
everywhere.
I
Search,
exist.
you search, you will find him.
Oh yeah, like my Instagram account that's supposed to be a lot of like, the promo, like, look how funny I am. I have opinions. It's just me and my kid and a lot of silhouettes. You're going to see a lot of cool silhouettes, you guys.
Right. So how have you been keeping with this pandemic? You were mentioning to me that at least work-wise and things haven't changed that much for you, but what's it been like?
It's so interesting because, like, as a lot of your listeners, have been going through this singular experience for themselves, right? Like, I actually have it's a really interesting time to be a part of this pandemic, because I feel like the world is experiencing something together. So as we have this mass experience, it's feeling very singular because we're separated. So everyone's got their quarantine story. Everyone's got what they were doing, who they were, what they were about, and what was on pause and what was ahead of them during this time. So for me, like I have a day job where like I work from home, so that's been great. The government was like, stay inside, and I was like, already doing that. This has worked out perfect. Thank you. I guess where my story comes into play, and there's a little bit more of a shift in my own narrative, is like as of last October, I started going through a separation with my wife, and we were together for 14 years. She's the only girl I've ever dated. Before I dated her, I said that I'm going to marry you and I'm going to have a kid with you one day, and that all came to fruition. Like I like very much like it happened, and
Yes.
we had this epic, wonderful love story that unfolded. And just as a precursor to this pandemic, it all started falling apart. And we were trying to figure out the logistics of things. And so she was still kind of co-living with me, and then the government was like, all right, you guys got to stay in your homes. And then me and her looking at each other like, oh no, but we don't like each other right now. Like, that's not going to work very good. So I started going through this divorce process in quarantine. I
With
was,
her
I
right
was,
there.
she was right up there. I was living in the basement. You know, like, I'm not sure if you know what 50-50 custody looks like when you live in the same house. That's awkward. All right, you have him at lunch,
Yeah.
I get him at dinner, right? Like, like how's that work? It's just like, for me, it was a really creative time where like a lot of artistic juices were really flowing because of how much pain I was going through and how much failure I was feeling, especially initially. And because, you know, when you're in such a long relationship and you're, you know, you very much believe in having a family and that's no longer a part of your narrative, it's grieving. It's this huge sense of loss, and that's happening during a pandemic. It's happening during all these uncertain times where I don't know what's going to be happening with the economy. I don't know if we're like how hard a recession's going to hit after this. You know, like there's a lot of big global worries, and there's a revolution happening right now with Black Lives Matters, and like literally the world is turned inside out on its head over, and we're adapting to changes that we may not have even expected until 2030, you know. And now here it is, it's just all come rushing to us 10 years earlier, and like we're all kind of experiencing this. So as much as like there's that macro story, we also have our micro stories.
That's very true and very good point.
Yeah,
Because I have spoken with a lot of people during this pandemic. Part of what I do is speak with people, right? And
of
it's
course.
true. Almost everyone, it's their story, what's affected them, how their job's going, how their isolation is, how lonely they are, how stressed they are. Not many people are talking about the global or even the local community and how it's affecting even just down the street, how it's
Oh,
affecting your neighbors.
absolutely. Like I live in a town of 20,000 people. I moved from Hamilton, Ontario, which was those were my hustle years. I was young. I was doing stand up. I wanted to be in the gritty steel town where I dragged my knuckles and did my thing. Right.
Where I first met you was in Hamilton. Yeah.
It was at the yacht club, right?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So I have a pretty good memory for where I meet people. So like, yeah, I remember that was a bit of a strange show, but like,
It was an odd one. It was a CD relaunch launch party.
it was with like punk bands, kind of, right?
Yeah,
Like,
a bunch of
yeah,
rock bands, and then the after show was comedy. Which
yeah. While everyone's drunk in a
I got to
giant
tell
yacht
you, that
club.
was I think that was actually more enjoyable than the rock show. The rock show was good, but the comedy was great. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. That's great. Like comedians have this great attitude. Like no matter how bad this is gonna go, we're excited for it. Like we're like, oh, this is horrible, buckle in because this is a story I get to tell later, right?
Yes.
And so the comedian's perspective of this quarantine, of this pandemic, is like, well, this is horrible, but this is one hell of a story to be telling
Yeah.
later.
I'm getting some
And
material here. Yeah.
oh my goodness, well, especially like going through a divorce during quarantine, I'm like, oh, the je ne sais quoi is just perfect right now. Like even like my ex, on her way out, like we were just talking, she was like sitting on the arm of the couch, and you know, she had one foot pointing towards the door, one foot pointing towards me, which was very much what the marriage felt like in the last 2 years anyways. But in that last moment, she was like, well, you know, at least you got some material out of this, you know, in that kind
Yeah.
of like sweet voice. And, you know, and that really brought me a lot of joy to hear that from her, because with all the anger, with all the upset feelings and the feelings of betrayal and all that kind of stuff that happened in our marriage, she still could see me. She still knew who I was at the end of the day.
That's
She,
pretty awesome.
yeah, you know, like she could see that, like, I'm someone who gets my energy off of this comedy thing and my identity is fully in it. So she never has ever faulted me for talking about us on stage or opening up my veins and talking about the things that are most personal to me. You know, like I was been attempting to date, definitely reeling back on that, because I've been cryogenically unfrozen in a time I do not understand. Right? Like when I dated, you had to approach the person, you had to look in their eyes. Like,
Yeah. Now just you type a couple things and
oh,
sit over
you,
it. Yeah.
I don't like the swipe right culture because it's like window shopping for human beings. It feels awkward and doesn't feel like this organic connection with another person. And I know there's people that do develop that. And obviously, we're going to evolve to the way our culture adapts to things.
Yes.
But for me, I don't value it. I don't value that style of relationship building.
See, it's interesting you brought up online dating. 'Cause that's actually where I met my wife. Was on online.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. So
But
you guys are
but
more
I
successful than
had
us.
but I had a very different experience with online dating before coming across her profile. But
Okay, got you.
we connected, and so did she. And both of our online dating experiences prior to meeting each other was very much this fake. Like you use the term swipe left culture. I actually don't really know what that means because I met her before the days of Tinder and stuff. It wasn't
Oh yeah.
right. It was actually an online platform to form relationships, not a booty call platform. So
Well, and that is really interesting because, like, yeah, like I was on the Facebook dating app,
okay,
right? Like I wasn't going too crazy, I was like, I already use Facebook. I'll just try it over there,
it's already here, it's already there.
Yeah. So, and it's weird because you can click like, do you want to try to make a connection with this person or not? It's just a choice, green or red, right or left, right? Yes or no. And for me, the thoughts that go through your head when you're choosing, you're looking at them, you're looking at the words they chose to describe themselves, and I'm like, okay, are you caring? Are you interesting? Are you subversive? Are you rebellious? Like
Really hard to know. Yeah,
how do you know? And the things that I'm attracted to and the things I value, I'm like, I'm not going to discover that from a profile. I'm not going to discover that from months of texting on a messenger. Like, it's stuff that you live through. You'll live through each other. And that's like, when you come to that point where you're really sacrificing that need to have control and that need to protect your trust, and you give it, you're like, I'm going to give some trust to you. I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable with you because I know that's going to open us up to a world together that we can truly explore. And I'm so lucky that I can say I had that with my wife. And I'm hoping that once we get through all the courts and all that kind of stuff and we find a normalcy, that we can have that in a different way again. There is a part of me that never ever wants to lose her. Like I've lost my wife. That is what it is. But like, I don't want to lose her because I so value her as a person and want to see what she's going to bring to this world and want to see how much life she can bring to my son. I want her to bring him so much joy.
man, that is incredibly beautiful and really refreshing to hear. Uh, it's not often you hear people talking so positively about their ex, especially very recently after after the breakup. It's usually that's the point where everyone's angry. So I have
Oh
to
yes.
wonder, how you managed to keep that mindset and keep yourself framed that way. Do you think comedy and just sort of the way you view
Yeah.
the world is kind of
Absolutely. So like my like, and this may end up being a little long-winded, but it's I think really important to talk about actually, because so stand-up comedy for me was almost a bit of a lateral move. I always knew I wanted to talk to people and make a difference in some way, shape, or form. So I initially went to Bible college to be a pastor, but I was kicked out for running around naked with my buddies. Right? I was 19 years old, like living La Vida Loca, so like, and then like I was like, well, how am I still going to tap into this thing where I wanted to tap into, um, like all the things that matter to me were like self-expression, but how that related to building relationships, how you can build an entire community through your own self-expression and encourage others to feel the same courage to do it themselves. And a part of that with comedy is accepting that things are not the way you would write them if you wanted to write your perfect story. you have to actually accept that your story is going to be a lot of left turns you weren't expecting. Your expectations in general will be shattered time and time again. You have to be prepared to be let down, rejected, and at the end of the day, still go, I'm still worth it. Still go, I'm still worth putting the time into myself, putting my time into others. I'm not going to compromise my values. I'm not going to compromise what I believe in and what gives me life and what gives other people life just because I'm in the gutter right now. And comedians we get an education in being in the gutter. So we end up knowing how to survive in the sewers. That's just a feeling. So the moment, and like, yes, I'm talking very positively about my ex, but we had an unbelievably toxic divorce. It was bad. It was just very bad. Like Jerry Springer bad. you know? And so like there's a lot of, not, there's a lot of that going on. And so if you were to see us in the moment, it would feel primal and animalistic, and you would be like, how do these people ever love each other in the first place? Like that's what you would say as a voyeur, as a fly on the wall,
Mhm.
right? But as like someone who's come to understand that life is completely gray, always gray, that things are never just this or that, black or white, that like you can have an unbelievable toxic breakdown of a marriage and still respect who that person is. That sounds crazy, right? Because you want to go off of your anger and your hurt and all those kind of feelings, but those emotions, they're going to leave you eventually. Like you feel it right now. You wake up to it, you go to sleep with it. It's good. They creeps in your dreams at night. Like this is real. This is what happens. But for me, I know that I'm not going to feel this way forever, and I know who I fell in love with, and I know that she's still that person, and I know that she gets an opportunity to reinvent and rebuild herself, and hopefully be more of that person with someone else. And that's a hard thing for me to accept, because I thought it was a forever love. I'm a romantic. I'm a Pisces baby. you know, so like I have that little fishy Pisces brain that just wants to mush in the love and never let go. So if I saw my entire relationship as this beautiful thing, then I would be doing disservice to myself if I didn't see my entire breakdown of the relationship also as a beautiful thing.
That in itself, I think, is quite a beautiful statement. That's
Yeah.
kudos to you for that. That's amazing. That's
It's hard. It's hard work to come to these kind of conclusions, especially as men, because I'm a straight white dude, right? I have a lot of privileges in my life. I've had a lot of opportunities that other people haven't had. I'm very well aware of this, right? And part of that is my responsibility right now as a citizen is actually more on not like what I do with my art, but it's actually what I do with my parenting. Because like right now, everything that's important to the world is how we raise our children.
yeah.
And it's what we're putting into our kids. So like I do not want my son looking up to a toxic masculine example. I had that in my life and I rejected it. Like I had my mom divorced my dad when I was 1.5, and then I had a stepdad who was factory dad. Come home with the metal lunchbox, where's my dinner? That guy. And I rejected him as a parental figure. I was like, no, I have a single mom. You're the money. Like I was like, I rejected him. I rejected him with all my heart because I just couldn't see. I did like my mom was such a strong woman that I didn't see the the I guess the purpose of this weak bravado. That's a good way to put it.
I
Weak
think it's a very good way to
bravado.
put it. Yeah.
Like, and that's the way I see that toxic masculine father energy, where it's like, do as I say, not as I do. Listen, blah blah blah. I do not want my son being raised by that kind of man. So for me, my son needs to be raised by a man that owns up to his own mistakes, that like admits when he's wrong, that is going to better himself and actually go do it, that's going to put in the work. And he's got to be raised by a man that's okay with his emotions, okay with talking about how he feels out loud, and not feeling ashamed to be honest. And this is the kind of stuff like, and how old are your kids?
My oldest just turned 15, and
Oh,
then
wow.
and then I have a 7 and 6.
7 and 6. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I got two
So
kids. Yeah.
so my little guy's 3.5, right? And so you're 7 and 6 year olds, like dudes, girls, figuring it out, like
All girls. Got 3
uh, uh,
girls.
3 girls. Okay, cool. So I'm raising a boy, right? And like, so you and I are on opposite sides of the coin, because with the narrative that's going on in our culture right now, you're raising like strong ass women, right? And I'm raising like an empathetic man.
Yep.
Like I'm trying to raise a man who understands, a man that doesn't put that behavior forward, that doesn't grow up to be that thing we talk about on the news,
Yes.
right? Or see negatively in the workplace or anything like that. And so we have different responsibilities, right? But like those responsibilities are still the same. It's
Yep.
still
Same.
about it's still about leveling the scales, and it's still about equality, and it's still about just instilling a sense of values in our children. I don't think that's ever going to go away, whether or not religion's a heavy presence in society or not, or whatever. And so with my son, I'm watching this 3.5-year-old. We have this field behind my house. The weeds grow like crazy. So these dandelions, they come in for a day, it's just pure yellow. The next day, it's pure fluff, right? And my kid will run through the fluff. You just see it all going up in the air. And he's got a blanket that he's using as a cape. And he's singing Let It Go because my son looks up to princesses, and that's a cool thing as a father to see, that like my son's not even aware that he is a contribution to an evolution of our species in our culture.
Well, maybe
And
your
that
son will be part of the puzzle, part of the gears that destroys the toxic masculinity in the world right now. Because
and hopefully just helps rebuild things. We have been on such a trajectory of conflict and chaos, like all of history is, and we just hope that our next generation can maybe piece it together, right? Like,
I'm trying to do the same sort of thing on my end. Like you said, different side but same coin.
mhm.
Um, I'm trying. There's so much pressure as a man to be, like you said, the big caveman, tough, pounding your chest, emotionalist, brick wall.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my part with my daughters to, I explore emotions with them, and we have talks because I want them to understand that when they grow up, yes, men are portrayed as these big, strong machines, but we're also human. We also have emotions. We get sad, we get depression. In fact, men are, I can't remember the statistic, but we are significantly more likely to, commit suicide due to anxiety and depressions because there's not this dialogue.
Oh yeah, it's funny. Evolution wise, women are actually far more resourceful than men.
Yeah,
So it's funny that men were the quote unquote providers.
yeah, they're the superior half of the.
Because they're definitely way more resourceful. They have much more of an analytical brain. I do think there is a part of men that's naturally cavish, just kind of like, oh, like, and you see it with me if I'm around pizza, right? Like there's
I have the
nothing
exact same problem, so we should go for pizza sometime.
there's nothing civilized about me. All this kind of like brevity that we're having this conversation right now doesn't exist when I'm around pizza. Is rah, oh. Like that's me and pizza, right?
All right, so I have to then because you brought up pizza, I have to ask you the ultimate question:
Of course.
does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. Because if we could go to Exhibit A, I
Yeah,
very much believe that
I, I'm definitely
pineapple belongs on pizza.
I am definitely team pineapple myself. So
Yeah. I legitimately tattooed it on my arm because I like to win arguments. But like yeah, like I used to end my shows by saying we all belong on pizza. It was like I don't know. I thought that argument was really funny. Do you know why I love the pineapple on pizza argument so much?
why is that?
Here's the thing. I like pineapple on pizza. I definitely do. I don't believe it's the best ingredient. The best ingredient on pizza is by far cheese. Cheese is undoubtedly the best ingredient on pizza. And the more cheese, the better, you know? But no one's out there talking about cheese, you know? No one's giving it their all when it comes to the cheese conversation. But so the pineapple, it's divisive, and I love that it's the dumbest form of division you could possibly have, because there's a president in our next door country that's creating these real divisions that are very upsetting to navigate, right? And there's a lot of different forces at play creating real life divisions. And for a second, I want us to just shut up and argue about pizza, because like that's a division that brings us together. We can roast each other. It's fun. There are no consequences.
Yeah.
You know, the
It
pineapple
doesn't
on pizza
really matter
people,
what side you're on.
it doesn't matter what side
If
you're
you
on.
like it, order it. If you don't, don't.
And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, y'all both love pizza. Like that's
No,
what it
no
comes.
one's arguing whether or not pizza's good. So
Exactly, right? So if you had two people, imagine a real argument, like a real argument about like a divisive subject, right? And so you have this group saying, oh, we don't like your group because of A, B, and C. And this group going, well, we don't agree with that because of A, B, and C. And at the end of the day, they're like, but we're all people. It's just pizza. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it this way. Okay, cool. Want to sit down? We'll order half and half.
yeah,
You can do that with pizza. You can have yours and mine on the same pie. It's beautiful.
that's amazing. I never thought I'd see the day where pizza has been used as a brilliant analogy for humans coming together. But I love it. That's amazing. That's the
Yeah.
power of
Uh,
pizza, I guess.
I will infuse meaning where there is no meaning. I will, like, that is my bag. Like,
Oh, that is wonderful.
yeah, and I just going back to kind of what we were talking about with as we're like raising our kids and stuff like that, right? Like, because I was raised in a blended family, and I'm now raising my son in a blended family, right? Because I don't know if I'll remarry or if like my ex will remarry and all this kind of stuff. And so I just think it's really important, and I'm bringing this back to our initial conversation about comedy, that like the things that I've learned from stand up and learned to love from being a comedian, which is almost, it was what I was expecting when I wanted to be a preacher. Because when I wanted to be a preacher, I was like, I'm going to help give people meaning to their lives, and by being in this role. But I didn't realize how political it was. You know, I didn't realize, like, I wanted to go be in, like, I wanted to be impactful. I didn't want to be a politician, right? If
Yes.
the only scenario I'll ever be a politician is if you ever see me on Survivor. Then I'm gonna be politicking my way all the way to day 39, baby. You know it, right? But like, unless I'm in a game where we all know the rules, I don't want to be a part of a game that makes up their own rules. And so that for me was created a lot of distaste. But then I liked comedy because it was a game with no rules. It's just a wild west.
Mm-hmm.
It's just existing, right? So all the people that I heard preached about in the church, and you got to understand, I have this Protestant background, so I'm going to be responding quite, thickly towards my experiences with it. And as much as like I'm not trying to like slam them or bring them down, but there is always this propriety, like the streak of propriety that you would see within the church of acting and being a certain way, but not really walking the walk, just talking the talk and looking the look, right? And so they would talk about the people that need to be saved, right? And like the hard people in life that maybe someone went down the road of alcoholism and broken marriages and all this stuff. Well, all those people are going to comedy shows every night of the week. They're in that room, and you know who I don't see in that room is those people I went to Bible college with. They're all watching The Princess Bride somewhere in someone's backyard, just having another night, and like I like when they preach about spreading the gospel to Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. I'm like, you don't even go to the end of your own neighborhood. Like how, like, and the whole idea of the gospel is the good news, right? It's this good news of Jesus Christ. For me, it's the good news of purpose. It's a good news that no matter how bad things can get, that we're all worthy of redemption, that we're all worthy of like being our best selves, you know. And there's that like saying, if you don't if you don't accept me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't accept ourselves at our worst. That's crazy. We don't deserve to be at our worst either, you know. So until before we spit that kind of nonsense out there, maybe we should point the finger gun to ourselves here and be like, no, let's talk about self-ownership, let's talk about self-love, let's talk about self-responsibility, and then maybe you can talk about others. But like I've always thought other people's opinions are none of my business. That's a RuPaul quote, and I'll stick to that. You know, like,
Love that. Yes.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
RuPaul's got all the shit.
True though, because someone else thinks of you is a reflection of them, not a reflection of yourself.
And you know what? It's obviously like it's usually a misinterpretation,
Yeah.
right? I'm definitely like, oh my gosh, like I think I okay, in my own world, I feel like I am the most misunderstood person. I don't think I'm understood at all. I don't think people get where I stand. Like actually, you're probably a good one to talk to about this, because before coming into this podcast, did you think we'd be having a conversation this way?
Did I think the conversation would be going towards parenting and religion? No, I did not.
No, but like even in the terms of like you saw me as a comedian,
Yes.
and you were maybe expecting it to be more jokey or more entertaining and that kind of stuff, right? I'm just saying you had one idea of one facet of who I am.
Mhm.
And when I'm on stage, I'm definitely that, right?
Yes.
And if you were kicking the jokes right now, I'd be kicking the jokes right now. But like the thing is we're multifaceted. We're not supposed to be boxed, right? And the part of the problem is our minds make sense of things if we can simplify them, right? That's just how we organize. And so that's why we try to simplify genders and race and roles, right? Like we try to simplify these things. And I hate when people try to simplify me,
Yes.
because I've worked hard to be complex, baby. I am a half Portuguese, Bible college dropout, failed comedian, divorced dad during an effing quarantine. I deserve my own personal diversity right now, and I get to be as emo and complex as I want to. And I love it.
That's
I
awesome.
like it. I don't want to be boxed, man. That's very nervous to me. That feels totalitarian. I'm just gonna be in a gray suit with a number?
I absolutely agree, and I definitely felt that in my life as well. That people tend to stick me in little tiny boxes, and um, yeah, that's part of the purpose of things like this podcast and me going into coaching was to show the world, I have a lot more to offer. I'm not this, quiet little person sitting in the corner. I am there to help, and I have a voice to be heard.
Absolutely. And I think like no like on that note, like I think it's like if you can get to a point where you yourself go, I have so much to offer, and then you can not make it about you, and the people that you're with, you can look at them and go, you have so much to offer,
Yes.
right? Whether or not you agree with what they're offering, you know, like there shouldn't be any stipulations to this. Like just you have so much in you. Like why would we not side on optimism here? You know, just go with the most maximalist like perspective and be like you are so worthy of like offering so much, right? I hate when I hear like especially from introverts, when they feel backburnered because the extroverts are taking all the limelight or taking all the attention, and they're measuring their offering based on that, right? Well,
Mm.
like, oh, that person's giving more and they're getting more attention, and like there are studies that show that like extroverts tend to get hired more and stuff like that, right? But it's not true. It's just not true, right? It's just like introverts have a ton to offer. They're just not loudmouths about it. That's the only difference, you know? Like I'm as extroverted as I come, you know, but I was married to an introvert for a very long time. And I got to understand her worldview and how like she at parties felt small or insignificant or invisible. And I at parties felt like the party, right? Like I'm like, oh, people came here for me.
Yeah.
Where's my feather boa? You know, like I definitely have that approach where like, and maybe that's confidence, but like I still think that like, what I would say to Lindsay, my ex, is I would say like, you know, you feel invisible at those parties, but even though I'm there feeling like the party, I feel invisible too because I feel like they want something out of me. They want to be entertained, they want to be distracted, and they don't actually want me,
Yeah, they're not
right?
there for deep conversation. They're there to be entertained.
Imagine I start talking like this at that party.
Yeah.
They'd be like, dude, you're being a bit of a downer.
Yeah.
Right? Like, can we get the funny ha-has from you?
Oh,
Like, well,
jokes.
where's
Yeah.
yeah, come on. Because like sometimes we use people as these like deflection shields. Like, oh, if all eyes are on him, no eyes are on me. And I get that, you know. I don't mind being that moving target at times, but like again, that's what the comedy stage exists because it's an environment where it's built for that.
Yeah. When you're on stage, yeah, please, all eyes on me. I'm going to tell my jokes. Please laugh.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like it's almost like rocket science trying to explain to people at a party, you know, I actually might be interested in just hearing about you right now.
Yeah.
You know, like I kind of want to hear, oh, you work in an office. Like you were telling me right before this, you work in an office, you do marketing. Cool. What kind of marketing you do? Well, what do those conversations look like? What kind of obstacles do you think are coming up for you, especially like after this? You said you're in automotive,
Yes.
right? Like so like do you think your industry is going to be really impacted by the pandemic, or do you think like people might like they might be traveling more statistically? There's like all this planning going on now and this and that, and actually maybe it's going to boom, like whereas like the comic book industry, let's say we have another guy that works for the comic book store and he's like, well, during COVID the publishing houses went tits up, right? No one's doing print anymore. All the comics, Marvel, DC, they moved to digital. So I'm making my money off of Funko Pops. I'm not making my money off of comic books anymore. You know, that's not my life and those aren't my stories, but I want to hear those stories. I want to hear how other people are impacted. And that's what you're doing with this podcast. You're getting a glimpse into all those different stories,
Yes.
you know, and that's cool. And
Loving it too. It's awesome.
yeah, man. And so like I definitely come at it with a more like I it's a little more nuanced, my perspective on things, just because like I prefer it that way. You know, like I have friends that are absolutists where they just see things as one way, and I think that sucks. You know, I just think that's a sucky way to live. I'm like, man, you must not be getting anything out of anything right now. Because if you open yourself up to being out of your comfort zone and you open yourself up to being prepared to see a different part of yourself that maybe you weren't willing to, or maybe you were scared of, like the rewards that you are just waiting for you and you're ignoring so many rewards. It's like, hey, I'm telling you, if you dig here, you're going to get a treasure box full of money, and you're like, nah, I'm not gonna dig there. I'm just gonna keep bouncing the shovel off the tree because that's what makes sense to me right now. You know, like I'm just going, I'm not gonna dig there. Like I really feel like we should do the hard digging, and we'd be surprised at what we're gonna find within ourselves.
That, that's a very new analogy that I haven't heard before, but I think that
I made it up on the spot.
that's awesome. I think that definitely paints a very vivid picture.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping the listeners and viewers can take something from that and look at their own life and look where they're not digging. Right?
That's great. Like, yeah, look where you're not digging. If you want to know where you're not digging, the thing in your head that's like, no, I can't do that. No, I shouldn't say that. Question it.
Yeah, but why? Why
Yeah,
should I do that? Why shouldn't I say that? Is
that's
it because
that's
of
how you put the shovel in the ground.
yeah,
Like, start with your questions. Question why you think the way you think, or why you believe the way you believe. Because guess what? Your opinions and the way you see the world, you're not the one that got it. You're not the only person in this world. Yeah, like, you figured it out. I'm sorry to tell you, none of us have figured this out.
oh,
It's a constant work in progress. So, and you gotta get on that train that, like, you still got work to do, and that work will never end. So start digging. Absolutely.
yeah. It's one of my favorite quotes is actually one of the quotes that got me into personal development and everything all to begin with. It's actually a quote from the philosopher Plato,
Okay.
and he talks about how you create your reality in your mind. So everything you see, everything, the way you observe the entire world, the way everything appears to you, you create in your mind. So
Hmm.
simply by shifting your mindset, you can actually change your entire reality. And
Yeah.
so when I first heard that, that actually caused a shift in my mindset, and all of a sudden my entire reality changed. And I started seeing the world in a totally different way. I started to go back to your analogy. I started putting my shovel in the ground and poking around and seeing what I could find, right? Because I was like, well,
Yeah.
why do I not want to put the shovel in the ground? What is it stopping me? And I realized, well, it's really nothing. It's really some nonsense beliefs I gave myself years ago about not being able to do it, but they're not found in any kind of rational thinking. It's just simply, I told myself one reason or another, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or I need to go this way.
You know, I I have your next podcast guest for you. All right. I want you to reach out to a friend of mine named the Gramazing Reed. Okay. He's a magician. He's a magician. All right. This guy, you're talking about the shovel in the ground. He used to come out to my comedy shows. He was working as an editor in, like, a TV station. He was hating his job. And he would talk to me, and he'd have these conversations being like, man, you go on stage and you just do this thing that you're attracted to. I wish I had that gumption. I wish that I could go up and do it, right? And, like, and he's just naturally funny, great, like, he's charismatic, but, like, in an introverted way, and, like, he's just really interesting. And, like, we were having these similar conversations about, like, maybe it's time to start digging in those areas that you're afraid of. And he started getting really attracted to magic. He loved the idea of mystifying people. He did it with editing, right? He could use his artistry as an editor to take something and turn it into something else. And so he loved this idea, if I can go on stage and create something from nothing and mystify and like bring that to people, that, like, that's a great motivator. And he started digging, and now the guy's like a professional magician,
That's
you know. Like, he's literally, like, I met him as a corporate stooge, and now the dude's a magician. Like, like, he's got his own little sign and box and everything, right? And, like, he's quirky and weird, and he'd be a great person to talk to because he is someone who put the shovel in the ground.
that's amazing. I definitely will be reaching out to him then.
Yeah,
Love to
yeah.
hear his story.
I'll connect you guys after this,
Awesome.
right? Like,
I think the moral of the story here for everyone is just put the damn shovel in the ground.
yeah.
You don't find
I think
anything
we
in the,
got the podcast
yeah,
title.
you don't find anything in the first hole, dig another one. Just keep
Yeah.
going. Just see what you can see. You never know what
Yeah,
you can do.
because the worst thing you can ever do is just not pick the shovel up,
That,
right? That's complacency. That's apathy. Do not give in to that, please.
what's the whole I always forget. I'm not a sports guy, so I always forget which athlete said this and even which sport it was. But there was the you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
It was Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Okay.
Come
I was thinking,
on.
I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's a basketball. I am definitely not a sports guy. I've always been more of a music person myself.
It was Michael B. Jordan, the
Michael
actor.
B.
Was
Oh, okay.
no. Yeah, no, that's a Michael Jordan quote. It's a great quote. I'm a person that takes a lot of shots, and I miss a lot of shots, right? Any of my peers and colleagues over the years can tell you, like, yeah, Clifford really loves what he does, but he takes a lot of risks, you know? And it's true. I do take a lot of risks, which means I'm never polished, I'm never honed, I'm never presentable. So you don't see me on JFL because that doesn't make sense for who I am or what I'm about or at this time. There's friends of mine that have been in it for less time that are much more polished, and you do see them on JFL, and that platform makes sense for them, right? But when you're just like a non-promotional, hippy dippy comedian who purposely moved to a town of 20,000 people just because it had a beach, like like your priorities are just different. And like for me, I've always been attracted to this idea of a big and small life. I want where there's times in the year where I'm going out and I'm taking those swings. Like I'm on a stage in front of thousands of people and I'm making them laugh and I'm being wild and crazy and I'm traveling and meeting people and trying new food and it's awesome. And then I want to come back home and I want to sit by the beach with my kid while he tries to figure out how to make sandcastles out of mud. And we collect rocks together for grandpa. And then, like we talk about what soup we're going to make for dinner and just life. I want that just as much as I want the big stuff. You know what I mean? I used to have this idea when, in theology school, people would talk about, these concepts, theological concepts, philosophical concepts, and like, is heaven a physical place? Is it a spiritual place? And all this stuff. I had this artistic interpretation of what I thought heaven would be. And it didn't come to me till much later when, the Higgs boson, the God particle.
Yep.
Yeah, so they discovered like this particle that was smaller than the particle, like it's like the smallest thing. And I thought that was so interesting that like, oh, we thought we knew the smallest thing, but there's something smaller. And then I had this thing in my head where I was like, what if like that is what heaven is? Like heaven is the smallest thing imaginable, but once you get in there, it's infinite, you know? And I wonder if that's the same for human potential. I wonder if you tap down and you get into the smallest part of who you are, getting into really the nitty gritty of like what drives you, and then the possibilities just become infinite. It's like who knows what you can do with yourself, right? And who knows what you can accomplish. You might be in for a surprise, and you're the one doing the surprising, so that's pretty cool. If you're not revved up about that, if you're not excited about that, I don't know what you're doing right now. I guess turn the TV back on. You're nuts. you know and I know a lot of what I talk about and how I talk about it is romantic, but that's my perspective. I choose to look at life as a romantic thing. I choose to look at quarantine and all this horrible experiences that the world's going through romantically because A, it helps me cope, and B, it reinvigorates me to do something positive in return instead of being stuck in my emotions, instead of being stuck in these ideas of what are holding me down. Because you know what? It's so easy to be depressed right now.
Oh, super easy.
It's literally, boom,
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Do
That's
nothing and you'll be depressed. Simple as that. Yeah.
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Honestly, great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's something I have noticed when I do get on a phone call with people, as I'm a couple calls a day, and the conversation, especially when it's my first time speaking to someone, they are very depressed at the very beginning of the call. And then you just point out a couple things and they realize that they're depressed because they've been sitting at home thinking about how depressed they are.
Yeah.
And that's all they've been doing. They haven't been looking at trying to find any positive side. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be depressed. There's a lot of reasons to be stressed right now for anyone who's been off work or stuck at home or quarantined or they're immune compromised or know someone is. There's a lot of reasons to be upset.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of positive that can come from this. Everyone's got hobbies, they've got interests and things that they've always wanted to do. but they've always been use excuse, I have no time, I have no time. But well, now you have the time.
Yeah.
Go read that book. Learn Japanese. Figure out how to cook the perfect Mr. Noodles. Whatever it is that you've been like
Yeah.
that you've been wanting to work on, now's a wonderful time to do that because you're at
Absolutely.
home. And with the available information on the internet today, there's no excuse either.
Well, and that's exactly it. Like I literally right beside us here, I bought this from Walmart, right? It's one of those little hanging boards,
Okay, yeah,
right? And I don't care how cheesy this is. I'm making myself a vision board.
nice.
The reason why I'm doing it is because I'm very prone to thinking negatively. I will be the first person to put myself down. I'll be the first person to say I can't do something. I have very negative self-talk. I will hold all the weight, and you know what? I'll say, "Oh, my entire marriage falling apart. It's all my fault," and all this kind of stuff, right? This is some heavy stuff to work through, and I'm literally going to be putting up something visual. I'm making like a little collage on it. I'm going to podgy it over, like I'm going full Pinterest here, and it's just something that I can look at and remind myself, "Hey, what's your truth, man? Like what's your truth? What's the thing that just reinvigorates you? And what do you need to remind yourself of right now?" Right? And I don't need to be reminding myself that I failed. I do not need to be reminding myself that my marriage fell apart. It's not something I need to be thinking about constantly because there's nothing I can do about it at this point. Right? What I can be doing is I can be bringing my best forward. And I really think what I do well is I think I bring the best out of other people. I think I get them to start challenging some of their own ideas and start being a little bit more willing and more confident to be themselves. And that's why I'm so transparent. It comes down to a value. I just think if I have nothing to hide, hopefully you'll be comfortable to believe the same thing, that you don't have anything to hide, which means you're not hiding it from your friends, you're not hiding it from your family, you're not hiding it from yourself, right? Because we do that. We ignore things, we hide things, we try to stay away, and like I think we need to dig in no matter how uncomfortable it is. So like this what I'm doing for my hobby is I'm making a Pinteresty vision board to say you can do it, Cliff.
I'm actually a big believer in vision boards. Um, not everybody learns the same way, not everybody works the same way,
Yeah.
and I'm a visual guy myself. And for me, having something like a vision board, something you can look at, and whether it's superficial, like you have a BMW sitting on there that you really want, or whether it's more of a broader concept of something you want, or like just happiness.
Hmm.
Simply having not really like a goal, but kind of something to aim at. I find it's helpful to look at it every day and not think about what do I need to do to get that car or to get happiness. It's
Yeah.
think about the person, think about yourself as the person who already has that car, who's already happy, who already lives in the town they want to live in near the beach. Like
Yeah.
think about life in that place already, and then you think about, okay, well, who is that person?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about like the vision boards, they're easy. Honestly, they're very easy to make fun of because I as a comedian, like everything's kind of roastable.
Yes,
So like I can
I
look
know you
at
can do a whole bit on that easily.
I can do a whole bit on vision boards. I can do a whole bit on like, oh, you need a picture on the wall to feel it. Like I can go down that route if I want to. But I'm also not embarrassed to say like, yeah, I want that picture on the wall. I want to look at it. For me, it's not it's about the broader concepts. It's not about the superficial things. It never has been. And like so I've done 2 tarot card readings recently. And I was talking to you about this before, that I believe tarot card readers are like the first life coaches because they talk about the past, the present, and the future. And
Yes.
they talk about where you've been, where you are, where you're going, and what you're going to do about it. And that's super interesting. And the trajectory of the cards on both readings were the exact same, which was crazy for me. There were different decks, but the trajectory was the same. So my most recent reading was yesterday. My past was the Empress. It was very maternally led, so I was very much a child needing protection and nourishment, and that definitely is related to my mother and related to my wife. And then my present is judgment, which is actually the release of judgment, the release of self-judging and being like, I'm no longer going to be like pointing the finger at myself and blaming myself, and I'm going to move towards doing the things I have to do to get to where I want to go, right? And like it's getting to that place of acceptance. And then the future was actually the emperor, was this paternal figure, a very sure, provisionary kind of person. But for me, it comes down to one word, which is ownership. And I am now in a place in my life where I either own everything. I own who I am. I own my art. I own my contribution. I own my parenting. I own my mistakes. I own my flaws. I either own it all or I lost. That's the way I see it. I see if I do not do this, then it was all for naught. You know what I mean? Like I have to do this right now, or what was the point of this? And so I'm gonna have that word across, ownership, or just like maybe own it, girl. I don't know. Put a little
Something to
sass in
represent that
there.
concept. Yes.
But something that represents that concept of like, yeah. So like I don't want to own material things, but I definitely want to own myself going forward.
That's beautiful, man.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, Clifford. I've enjoyed every moment of this. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on and joining me.
Wait, is this podcast not 5 more hours? I blocked out an entire day. I'm just kidding.
You know what? I just have to have you back on again. I think.
I was gonna say, like,
yes.
maybe post quarantine we can do a check-in, and
yeah, see how things have gone since.
And anyone that's listening to this podcast, and this is why I say, like, I'm not really going to promote anything, but if you want to add me to a social media thing like Facebook or whatever, and just talk, just, say, hey, how's it going? And you just want to talk with me, I love that. So like anyone that's listening to this, feel free to reach out.
That's awesome. All right, Clifford. Well, thank you again so much for being on the show. It's been amazing. And Warriors, I'm going to leave you guys the same way I leave you every time. If you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours.
I love that.